All right. We should be recording now, I think. Yeah. All
Thanks.
right. Proceed.
So who's got this?
David Gruder, would you like to take point here?
I'm happy to do that if you all are ready for my report.
We are.
Okay. Then what I will do, if I have permission to do this, is to share. I was asked to put together a slideshow for this. So um, there we go. I think you're all able to see this. And so this is a debrief on the listening session that the San Diego community did a few weeks ago. A number of you who are here were at that. Freddie and Rex and Bradley was there too. And Jamie was there. And so this is my best attempt to synthesize the various comments and build those in with a proposal for your consideration about an architecture for moving forward based on what emerged during that meeting. So if there's anything, those of you who were there, if there's anything that I inadvertently omitted or distorted, then please speak up as I go through this. Okay, so the listening session ended up being about more than just listening because what emerged from my perspective could be viewed as a cultural diagnostic for at least MKP SoCal or maybe only San Diego. I don't know. Possibly for all of MKP, but more important than a diagnostic, a potential reset prototype for MKP, or if MKP is not interested, then for maybe SoCal. So here's what I'm going to cover. The themes that emerged, the meta pattern that I see, the kind of the core systemic issue that I see embodied or expressed through all of those themes, a recommendation, and then a larger context around why I think that matters. I'm going to unpack each of these six themes one at a time. But first, for those of you who are big picture people, you like to see the big picture first. I am just going to name what the themes are before I unpack them one by one. And I'm just checking to see if there's, okay, I saw a message from Salvatore. Um, and that's not relevant to the presentation, so I'll leave that alone. Right. So the six themes: belongingness, a fracture in our belongingness, politics versus purpose, institutional tension around that, archetypal tension around stewardship versus change, the steward archetype versus the magician archetype, unprocessed grief and trust, a rupture in grief and trust that was seen as not being sufficiently or fully processed, a loss of trust in leadership and in accountability being utilized, and a gap having to do with access, visibility, and relevance. So I'm going to unpack these one at a time. I know there's a lot on each of these slides. I did that because I wanted to be able to make a PDF of the slide deck available to all of you so that you would have all of this content to look at your own leisure. So bear with me as I unpack what's on each of these busy slides. Each of these themes I broke down into signals, which were quotes and observations, my perspective about the underlying dynamic beneath those signals, and a move forward recommendation related to this theme. So with the belongingness fracture, the signals were comments like not work enough, don't feel included, no place for me anymore. And there were comments, not direct quotes, but the upshot of the comments were about difficulty finding MKPI groups and not feeling at home, and a desire for connection, visibility, and options for daily gathering. My perspective is that the underlying dynamic in the belongingness fracture is lack of safety in terms of psychological belonging, where some men no longer trust that they can show up fully without ideological filtering, without filtering their own beliefs, their own perspective, their own attitudes. Move forward recommendation. What I would recommend considering is establishing a belonging without agreement kind of mindset as a core norm, to explicitly codify you belong here without needing to agree here, to re-anchor identity. Brotherhood supersedes ideology, and to create low barrier, high frequency connection points, daily or near daily open eye groups, in person or hybrid. In the case of San Diego, and I've been told that LA is considering creating a lodge as well, a lodge as a third space for both connection and programs. And those of you who aren't familiar with the notion of a third space, it's that third gathering place in addition to our personal lives or our home and our workplace. Third space. So that's my summary of the belongingness fracture, the signals of the fracture, my perspective about the underlying dynamic, and move forward recommendation around this fracture that I recommend that you consider.
Hey, David, there's
Okay.
a question in the chat from Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I heard secondhand mention of wokeness. I just wondered whether that first item under signals is
You know
not.
what? That is a typo.
Yeah, fair
That
enough.
should
Thank
say
you.
not woke enough.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks for catching that.
And David, I'm taking notes here. Is your preference for us to have questions with each slide or questions to the end? What's your preference around that?
My preference is that you ask questions with each slide.
Great. Are you complete with this slide? Are you ready for questions on this slide?
I am.
Okay. I have a question around difficulty finding I groups. Was that difficulty finding the groups themselves, or difficulty finding groups that they felt at home in, or something else?
Difficulty finding the groups themselves.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
was that. Just to context that for you, that was one person who said that.
Okay, great.
And just because it was one person doesn't mean that it's going to get excluded from the notes.
Great. Yeah. No, that's good to know. Yeah, then I guess my last question for this slide is about this norm, right? Like it seems to be assuming that we actually do as a area agree that we want to establish this norm.
That would be my recommendation for the Stewardship Council to consider whether or not you want to recommend that or adopt that as a norm.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I'm cynical about whether we could do that.
Oh, understood. Understood. Yeah. And just to be really explicit, I have no dog in the hunt in terms of having any desire to tell you all what to do. All I'm trying to do is faithfully capture, analyze, and recommend based on the input provided during this listening session.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments about this slide? Okay.
Yeah, David,
Just
overall, oop, just one
yeah,
thing.
we're
Go ahead.
just a
Yeah, just
comment that
okay, go.
I don't think that we are at a place with manpower yet where we could do daily or near daily open eye groups, certainly outside of San Diego, in a level of disbursement that would meet everyone's needs.
I don't even know if San Diego can do that. Again, I'm just reporting.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, David, I would thank you for this. I was just curious, was there any data collected on the people who attended this in terms of, when they um, joined, when they staffed, how many they've staffed? Just kind of get a contextual perspective on people that may be asking questions that initiated 3 weeks ago and don't know what an I group is, et cetera, and just to kind of give a little bit of context.
Great question. No, there wasn't. And in terms of that piece that you were asking about, context-wise, this was a man who was initiated in MKP a long time ago, moved to San Diego more recently, had trouble finding an I group.
Gotcha.
Ultimately did. I mean, at the point in time where this listening session occurred, he had done that, but that was his input, was that it was hard.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else before I move to the next slide? Not seeing anybody. Okay. So, second was politics versus purpose, perception around institutional tension. Signals were comments like politics does not belong in MKP, and focus on values, not politics. There was a perception expressed of ideological enforcement, left and right, and resistance to mandated multiculturalism. The reason that is in quotes is that that's the term that was used. So I'm just trying to be faithful to the comment. That's why that's in quotes. The underlying dynamic that I see is confusion between ontological values, meaning ontology, meaning meaning, right? How we make sense of things, um, on universal and unifying values, and ideologies, which are contextual and more group oriented or individual oriented and often polarizing. So confusion between what's a core value in MKP versus what's an ideology being pushed onto MKP. And again, keep in mind my wording with all of that is trying to be faithful to the comments that were expressed about that confusion. Move forward recommendation, create a clear values, not ideology boundary, meaning define and teach what MKP is, which is about dignity, accountability. This is all from MKP's website. Dignity, accountability, integrity, emotional competence, integrity-driven purpose, my slight rewording, cross-cultural awareness and inclusivity. MKP is not a vehicle for political alignment or ideological conformity. And then at the bottom of the slide was something I couldn't fit in the move forward recommendation section, which was the idea of introducing a simple operational distinction, meaning we work at the level of human values and impacts, not political positions, and then train community and program leaders to translate charged topics into values language and to disallow ideological prescribing, saying this is how it needs to be ideologically, uh, while encouraging impact exploration. What are the unintended impacts that we want to be aware of and decide what to do about when ideology infiltrates into MKP's core values? Comments or questions about that slide?
Yeah, David, I'm curious, and you may address this later, or it may be outside the scope, but
Sure.
I find it very hard to imagine that a lot of men, perhaps even men in this call, wouldn't find like the cross-cultural awareness and inclusivity included in what MKP is about currently in its missions and its values, to be fitting into the category of ideology rather than ontological values. And at the same time, I've worked with a lot of like facilitators for UPPD, things like that, who um, don't seem to view what they're teaching as ideology, but as basically data. I've heard language like even pointing like making that claim.
Yes.
Um, do you have any ideas around uh, reaching an agreement on what is ontological and what is ideology in that context of like vast disagreement about what is ideological and what is ontological?
Your question, I'll do my best to respond to that. What I need to say first is that what I'm about to say goes beyond what was expressed during this session.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
what I want to make sure all of you are clear about is that what was expressed by a number of men during this session was a perspective or a judgment that there's um, mandated multiculturalism and that the approach to multiculturalism in MKP has become politicized. So
Hmm.
that's a faithful recounting of a number of the comments that were made during
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
session.
Hmm.
I think to now answer your question personally, I think it would take a fair amount of attentiveness and sophistication to to weed out ideological infiltration from universal values. And I think that that is a noble undertaking in light of how many men at the conservative end of the political spectrum have disaffiliated from MKP. So I
So,
hope
so it would be worth it given the cost for not doing it.
that's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Max, I know you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just so there's I'm feeling a little bit challenged around this, and I don't know if this is a personal struggle or if this is a shadow that I'm calling. Um, I feel like uh, there's language being used that's not really defined, and I'm not even really clear who was in the room for this, like how many men. Obviously, those men may or may not have identified in particular ways, so you may not know how to describe them in terms of demographic or anything else, but I'm curious to know that just to give me some context for interpreting this. And also, when we're talking about politics, I think people have a lot of different definitions of what that means,
Yeah.
or inclusivity, or even woke has become a signifier of something much greater than either polarity would ascribe to it. And um, so I think that's one challenge I'm having in terms of how to receive this information. And I'm
Thank
also
you.
very conscious of the time
Yeah.
and how we can navigate that. And so we
There
can keep
were,
it
give or
down low.
take, about 20
Mhm.
people in the room, and I don't have a breakdown from there other than to say that the range of involvement with MKP ranged from initiation in 1989 to I think 3 or 6 months ago or something like that.
Thank you.
And I don't make any assumption about this being what we would call in research a representative sample. I make no judgments about that at all.
Yeah. Thanks. And
Yep.
just by way of process, and also in my role as Shadow Watcher, I'm going to encourage every man to track yourself internally and recognize when you're having reactivity around this information. And as I'm doing for myself, of like, what's coming up? What does that mean for me? How am I, what are the triggers that this is touching for me? And how can I receive this as information and then process it rather than processing it either in the chat or, from that trigger and reactivity um, or in the questions, which could derail David's conversation and presentation.
Thanks for that, Max. Okay. Unless there's an objection, I'm going to go on to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you.
Just checking. Okay. All right. Did I miss one? Yeah.
You did.
Stewardship versus change around archetypal tension was the third theme that I saw. Signals of that theme were keep what is good in MKP, meaning the traditions, so stewardship. Too much change alters the energy. Multiculturalism as practiced or interpreted caused men to leave. Corporate shifts unintentionally fuel division. All of those are quotes. Those are specific comments made by men who are in attendance. The underlying dynamic I see in this theme is a classic continuity versus evolution rupture or harmony. In this case, a perception of rupture, where one side fears loss of essence, either the traditionalists, the stewards who want things to stay the same, fear a loss of essence, whereas the other pushes for adaptation to current realities. And, some of these are microcosms of ruptures in our society in general, as I see it. Move forward recommendation would be to introduce an integrated stewardship plus evolution kind of framework to explicitly define stewardship as protecting the essence of what our tradition is without rigidity, status quo addiction, as I call it. And evolution would be more at the magician side of the steward magician counterbalance, where you're adapting the expression of that essence to current needs. Then what I couldn't fit under move forward recommendations at the bottom would be then to operationalize, meaning identify and document non-negotiable essence. What are the core energetics of NWTAs, just as one, for instance, or what's the non-negotiable essence of MKP as its core purpose? And then adaptable expressions that promote inclusion and engagement with MKP, having to do with language used and outreach, ways of doing outreach and ways of creating accessibility to all men, and disseminating a guiding principle, which is we evolve how we serve, not what we stand for. Comments, questions on this one?
Question on this.
Sure.
Were specifics raised that were outside of the New Warrior Training Adventure? Was this focused on the New Warrior Training Adventure around stewardship versus change?
No, it was both. Very much so, Christopher.
What were things outside the New Warrior Training Adventure that were referenced?
Having to do with institutional shadow or perception of institutional shadow, and I'll get to that in an upcoming slide.
Okay, thank you. If you
Sure.
could point that out when you hit it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Jamie.
Yeah, as in my comment in the chat, inclusivity is hard to define. Adaptation to current realities is also hard to define.
Mhm.
When we say, we know what the current reality is, that's making a political statement, in my opinion.
Well, yes, it could be, Jamie. On the other hand, I think it would not be controversial to say that the current reality is one in which there's a augmented sense of divisiveness and where men that lean toward the conservative side of the political spectrum have been vocal about saying why they have disaffiliated from MKP. So current realities at that level, I think, are quantifiable. Does that make sense to you, Jamie?
I'll take it for now. Thank you.
Sure. And I like the point that you're making. Fourth theme, a rupture in trust, unprocessed or insufficiently or incompletely processed grief leading to a rupture in trust. Signals, these were direct quotes. This is a wound. Grief for the loss of LKS, so the loss of Lodgekeeper Society, and certainly on weekends, but in general as well. MKP tucked tail on this issue. Again, that's a quote. The MKP tucked tail was a quote having to do specifically with perceptions of how MKP dealt with spirit. GNR process feels inadequate was a comment that most of the men who were present who spoke about this said. The underlying dynamic that I see is unprocessed collective grief or incompletely processed collective grief and perceived betrayal or a rupture that has led to erosion of trust. And this is part of institutional issues to go to underscore part of what you were asking about, Christopher. That's one slice of that. This didn't show up. This theme didn't show up as a disagreement problem. There were disagreements around other things. This theme showed up as unintegrated emotional injury around the loss of LKS and how the whole issue with spirit was handled or perceived to have been handled. Move forward recommendation, facilitate a more formal grief and repair process, not a discussion, not a debate, a structured process that I'll outline at the bottom of this slide, because if it's not addressed in a more complete way, my impression from what was expressed in this meeting and what I've heard other men say outside of that meeting is that this wound is going to continue to leak into and undermine productive discussion around every other issue and effort in MKP. It's like this thing, this shadow that's hanging over the institution in the minds of many men. A structured process, the structured process that I refer to, would have these ingredients: acknowledging impact without defensiveness and ordinarily unintended negative impact, acknowledging impact, space for grief expression, which is not about going into all kinds of judgment and editorializing, but authentic grief expression, clarification around what actually happened. If there's data that have ended up being missing in men's awareness, to fill in those data gaps, identification of what was lost in the dissolution of LKS that deserves to be renewed versus what was lost that can stay lost, if you will, and then identifying what we can innovate that deserves to help us move forward. Any comments or questions about this one?
I have a few. I don't know if this is public knowledge yet, but I believe we're past it needing to remain any kind of confidential. Um, we are moving towards experimenting in MKP USA with and using an enclosure with rocks and heat and water and steam. Um,
Yeah.
Toward where the grief or the GNR process currently is. Um, it will not be in a NEPI. It will not be in a round thing. It will not be connected to a tradition, an indigenous tradition. Um, but we have put Southern California at the front of the line for alpha testing this.
Thank you.
So yeah, I want everyone to know that. My second comment is around the word perceived betrayal rupture.
Mhm.
What if it's not perceived? What if it's actual betrayal? What if there are men who made these decisions that don't give a flying fuck about the people who are hurt, about the LKS, and about uh, the purification and renewal ceremony, or about
Mhm.
a lot of this stuff? Um, right, like
Mhm.
I'm seeing a lot of stuff right now that would be a good thing to do if someone was making an honest mistake and actually did care and was accidentally communicating that they didn't care. Um, I'm having a hard time seeing us do this if my belief that there's quite a few people in the power structure, both in Southern California and at national, that really don't give a fuck. Um, and the exhibit A I would give is how often I run into people who the first thing that they say when they come up against something like this is, well, if men don't want to do their work, we don't need them in the project, as the first thing that they'll go to.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, the reason that I use the word perceived, to just context that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is that I was doing my best to be very meticulous about reporting what was seen, what men's judgments were, not to report facts.
I appreciate that. I'm not attacking your use of the word there. I'm just,
Sure,
yeah, I'm putting my perspective on
I
that
get that.
betrayal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually share your judgment that it was authentic betrayal, real,
Hmm.
not perceived. But yeah, I get it. Any other comments on this one before I move on to the fifth? No. Okay. All right. Loss of trust in leadership and accountability. Signals. Um, these are direct quotes again. No accountability anymore. Canceled men. Cultish and dogmatic. MKP not using its own tools. Those were the comments that clustered under this theme from my perspective. The underlying dynamic, a perception that power is being viewed, at least on the part of a number of men who attended this listening session, as being exercised without transparency or reciprocity, and where standards are viewed as being applied unevenly or ideologically rather than through principles, being principles based. And move forward recommendation, reinstall visible accountability. Um, the visible is the key word in that phrase. So make accountability more visible and more consistent. Publish clear behavioral and decision-making standards. Apply them consistently across all perspectives. Establish a visible community feedback loop. Here's what we heard. Here's what we're doing about it. And then most importantly, um, the the theme as expressed during this listening session was a strong desire for leadership to model being accountable in real time, and judgments were expressed around times when leadership was seen as not being accountable, as not even caring about being accountable, and certainly not as not utilizing accountability procedures in MKP. Any questions or comments on that theme?
Yeah, I'm curious about which power centers were viewed as acting in this way, right? Are these only national power centers being viewed in this way, or are these local, right? As a member of the area core team, I'm particularly interested in whether there's a feeling that the area core team is acting without accountability or transparency.
The majority of the comments related to this had to do with the leader body, the USLB, the
Thank you.
US leader body, and specific leaders in the US leader body.
Thank you.
Jamie?
As one of the men present, I have to give credit to David Hyman and Rick Bronick, our San Diego leader body co-chairs, for even having this night of listening. It was really, I felt it was really needed and really appreciated, and it was not an easy thing to do. And a lot of the grief that I picked up was not just certain people in the U.S. leader body, but MKP USA board.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
with what happened to Bill Kauth and what has happened to 7 of the people who have kind of gathered around him to try and approach the board, the whole cancel culture thing is alive and well at the USA board level. And that's part of the lack of accountability, lack of using the tools. You know, they just canceled everybody and they banned these 7 people from MKP Connect, and they took away any avenue for, you know, reconciliation or conflict resolution or anything. It's like, nope, I'm just going to block you on Facebook, and, you know, I hope you go away.
Yeah,
And
thank you for adding that, Jamie. Thank you for pointing out a gap in what I reported, because that's absolutely an accurate portrayal of one of the themes that was expressed during the meeting.
You.
And
I won't get it. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I want to just call that is one interpretation of the events. So that is not data.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't speak to what happened in the room. I'm talking about the outside events with the board and all that. So
Yeah, got it.
And one thing I want to point out is that this area, Southern California, has a mechanism for accountability with regard to members of the leader body. So far, it has refused to use it. Other areas have contracts that they've written and require men to sign before they are allowed to lead weekends, and we have refused to do that, refused to hold any standards for our certified men that we choose to staff, other than that they are in good standing with the USLB. That is an option that is open to us. Other areas use it. If we want accountability, we can have it, but we have to make a decision together as a stewardship council to do that.
Got it. Got it. The only word that I would challenge is the word refused, because I don't know whether or not it's a conscious refusal or
I've brought it to the stewardship council many times over the last few years.
and the response has been no, we will not.
Yes.
Okay, that's refusal. Got it. Thank you. Clear. Final theme, access, visibility, and relevance gap. This goes back to a comment I made a little earlier. It took this one man who was an MKP for a long time before moving to San Diego. Took him months to find an MKP I group in San Diego. Question raised. It was not discussed. An answer was not discussed in detail, but the question was explicit. Where are younger men? Where are BIPOC men? And underutilized lodge, a perception among the men who were there that the San Diego Lodge is not utilized to the extent that it could be, and um, comment about there being fewer NWTAs than there used to be, even though we've combined a number of different communities into a large SoCal area. Um, Underlying dynamic, this is not just an outreach issue. It reflects a relevance and accessibility and discoverability gap that I think needs to be identified and filled. And I'm seeing the comment, we have 5,374 MKP SoCal brothers on MKP Connect. This town hall of under 25 represents, yes, absolutely. I totally agree. And that's why I said I'm under no delusions that this was a representative sample. I don't know that this was a representative sample. I know that this was men who felt juice about either being heard or about listening to those who wanted to be heard. Period. So I won't generalize. Believe me, I'm not going to generalize from this. And I also believe in listening to outliers and canaries in a coal mine. So thank you for putting in those stats, Steve. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. I just want to acknowledge that I'm having a lot of anxiety around this and just in general in my life. So I really have a hard time not going as like an outlier, maybe counting up the 5,374 that I just did on MKP SoCal, 135 pages times 40. Anyway, so yeah, I just want to say that this is an excellent start, and I'm really curious on where this is going to go, and I look forward to supporting it, in LA for for starters. But this is an incredible. So I didn't want it to come across. I think
Yeah.
Shadow Watcher left. I'm sure there's Shadow here. I just want to say it's coming from the heart. I really appreciate all of this.
Heard.
And Max is still in the room.
Okay.
Keep going, please, David.
Sure. So the move forward recommendation here would be activating the front door and the third space strategy. So the front door meaning opportunities for more frictionless discovery of MKP, clear, accessible online presence, explicit articulation of MKP's core values, its non-dogmatic stance, and guardrails that prevent it from being turned into a cult. Because I think some of those things particularly about MKP is not a cult. MKP has been really explicit over the years about saying, here's how we operate that is outside of how a cult operates. And that may bear more explicit featuring in material that's available. Local human outreach and online outreach, search engine optimization, AEO and GEO are artificial intelligence's version of SEO in search engine land. And so moving forward, all organizations have to be attentive not just to SEO, but to AEO and GEO, because AEO and GEO strategies for visibility when people do searches using AI, completely different strategy and tactics than SEO. Frequent high intrigue entry events that are easy to produce and attend. And a suggestion was made around maybe weekly, maybe too often, but that was the suggestion. Weekly, what's happening in MKP San Diego or MKP SoCal this week kind of communication. The third space notion, as I mentioned before, using the lodge beyond current utilization in San Diego, more of also a social hub, a creative hub for art events like we had on Saturday night of this past weekend, a connection hub, and a training hub beyond NWTAs. The lodge has been used for giving trainings beyond NWTAs, but comments were made about it there could be more of that. Relevance, translate MKP's value into current language without diluting its essence. Again, that theme once again. Okay, if I move
We,
forward.
I've got a couple different comments on
Yeah,
this. Um, and I'm curious, is it all right if we're go going over the hour? Um, I'm seeing this conversation taken at least to the half hour. Um, is that acceptable, first of all, to you, David, giving this presentation, and then to the other men on this call?
I can stay longer than top of the hour.
Okay, I'm seeing Kyle's out at the top of the hour. This will be recorded. This will be broadcast to on the SoCal info list. So
And
yeah,
these final slides are quite brief, so we
gotcha,
might be done close to the hour point anyway.
gotcha. I I've got yeah a few things to say around this one. Where are younger men? Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, as a former young warrior and man still under 40, I can talk for hours about how MKP doesn't treat younger men well, right? Like there's a reason we're not here. Um, I think there's also stuff around the BIPOC men. Um, the first thing I would look at is our multicultural model doesn't look at our cultural whiteness. That is, I I judge not being a BIPOC man deeply unwelcoming to BIPOC men. We need to expand our cultural model, and we are deeply resistant to doing that. Um, I also want to acknowledge, right, like, yeah, we're still hurting as an area from COVID. We have not recovered from COVID. We haven't, I should say, we haven't finished recovering from COVID. We've made a lot of progress.
Hmm.
Um, that goes not just for Southern California, that goes for the national uh, level.
Hmm.
A big part of this is we don't have manpower. Um, Using the lodge on a much more frequent basis, awesome. Please go do it. Do we have the manpower yet? I don't know. This means, we could view that just as a disempowering way of like, oh, we don't have the manpower to do this. Or we could say, wow, every single man that steps up to do something is way more than a drop in the bucket and is giving a major contribution. And so if you are on the fence considering stepping up and doing something, know that it matters. Know that it will make a difference. One of the biggest things I would point to is running a circle of men or a men's open circle. Jorge, how many men have gone through the weekend because of your open men's group, Jorge?
Lots.
I would I'm at I think 7 men, 7, 8 men.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, and so and they're still going on, and men still show up, and there's a lot of interest in this work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had one guy go through another guy who hasn't even shown up to the open men's group, has just has shown interest, and I've texted him every week. Let me know that he signed up for the one in May. Right? I've
Sweet.
got 5 regulars at my open men's group, and they're showing increasing interest in doing the weekend. And this is just something I'm doing once a week for an hour and a half. Right?
Got it.
So if you're up for doing something like that, it takes time, it takes sweat, it takes effort, but these open men's groups are resulting in men coming into our communities. And
Thank you.
yeah, um, another thing that another thing that I believe really builds things. I think really,
Thank you, Kyle.
yeah, thank you, Kyle. Really big thing that was useful in San Diego when we merged was getting really strong pits going because the pits are the bridge from the NWTA into um, into our community and doing really strong pits that give men full empowerment skills uh, to be able to fully participate in iGroup, I believe is one of the ways in which San Diego's been able to be revitalized over the last few years. So, and very few men are doing pits. So we've got a pit coming up. I think 2 weeks after the May NWTA. If you're interested in staffing that, even if you're not in San Diego, please reach out to me or Daniel Harris and say, hey, I want to staff this pit and come learn to staff pits. There are things that we are doing. We are making progress on this. And this is absolutely correct. We have not recovered from COVID yet. It really gave us a hit. We have a lot of work to do to get back to where we were in 2019.
Thank you. Okay to keep going?
Yeah, thank you.
So I took a look at is there a theme that kind of ties all of these 6 themes together, kind of a meta pattern? And the way that I see it as someone who thinks in systemic terms is that there's a breakdown in MKP's relational field integrity. So the integrity of how we are in relationship with each other, belonging, safety, trust and leadership, clarity about shared purpose, emotional processing capacity, accessibility pathways, and the perspective that was expressed at the end of this listening session on March 10th was that this breakdown in MKP's relational field integrity was temporarily restored, which is why men seem to have the impression that the session itself worked for the purpose it was designed to fill. And what was expressed was a desire to see things like this become a standard operating procedure moving forward from here. So my recommendation is to consider for the Stewardship Council to consider designing a formal field integrity framework that could be piloted in MKP SoCal, or if SoCal doesn't want to do it, maybe the leadership in MKP San Diego wants to do that, and to refine that framework through real world implementation, through utilizing it and refining it because of utilization, kind of as a test study or a prototype that could then be scaled system-wide throughout MKP. I think this directly aligns with a larger developmental architecture and positions MKP to lead in a much-needed domain where few organizations have real competence. We at least explicitly address shadow in MKP. I know very few organizations, whether for-profit or nonprofit, that explicitly at least attempt to address shadow.
Even acknowledge that it exists.
Yeah, and this could, by taking a next step forward, this could help MKP emerge into its next chapter as a groundbreaking innovator beyond just MKP, which I think I went the wrong way. Let's see. Field integrity. Okay. So high integrity, a high leverage next step, not as a one-time event, but as a repeatable cultural practice, monthly, or that should say monthly or biweekly or whatever frequency. Field integrity circles, same structure or similar structure, similar speaking pathways, because we set standards for men speaking up during the meeting. Same check-in and check-out discipline that can become an early warning system that helps us detect problems before they've exploded in an out-of-hand way. A culture repair mechanism for MKP's culture. A generator of greater belongingness. Thanks, Steve. A leadership feedback loop. And strategically, if MKP SoCal or MKP San Diego chooses to step into doing this, it could be easily positioned as a laboratory for high integrity, non-divisive human dialogue in a divided age. Non-political, not avoidant, capable of engaging difference without fragmentation. Because frankly, my bias is if we in MKP can't talk about touchy topics in transformative ways, who the fuck can?
Mhm, mhm.
And so the high level framing, I think this is my last slide, is my vision of MKP's potential expanded future as a civilizational elevation catalyst. What humanity is currently facing is not just divisiveness, it's a loss of our human capacity to stay connected across differences. That's my judgment of societal dynamics. And if we can't rebuild this capacity and brotherhood within MKP, it's unlikely to be built elsewhere. So if MKP rises to this challenge, we can become more than a men's organization. We can become an important part of a larger solution that our country and, in my judgment, all of humanity urgently needs at this point in history. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, David, I'm deeply grateful for you bringing this.
You're welcome. And it's an open-hearted offering. I've offered my best sense of how to make sense of what happened during the meeting, and I leave it to the Stewardship Council in your collective wisdom to determine what to do or not do about it.
Well, if Steve,
And let me pause here. Do we want this conversation to be recorded as well? I'm very willing to record it, but I want to check if you guys want this recorded or if you want the recording stopped at this point.
Maybe we should keep going until we break for another council. Yeah, keep it going. Anybody
Okay,
have
cool.
problems with that?
Yeah, so if
And
you were going to say something that you don't want recorded, I can pause the recording while you're talking. So I'm very happy to do that as well. So just know that you're being recorded in this conversation.
and I just have a request for kind of a time and process, check. And Freddie, is there more business other than this, or is this it?
That's why I kept the
yeah.
last part open, because I thought this would take the whole council. And we
Mhm.
can, reschedule another council meeting, but it'll have to be 2 weeks from today. So at the earliest.
may I speak now?
Please.
Okay, so a few weeks back, Steve Litwinchuk was exploring the idea of doing a listening session in Los Angeles. So he got me involved as community coordinator, and I reached out to some of the leader body in Los Angeles. Michael Pierce is on board. He's willing to be a part of this. Steve Ferris also was interested in also possibly facilitating the discussion. And so far, that's who's involved, the four of us. Kyle has a location where this could potentially happen in Glendale, the rec center. And in addition to, I wanted to bring this to your attention as well. I wanted to have a conversation about possibly incorporating some of that social aspect in the community before we have this listening session. I don't know, as maybe a you know, I'm losing my thought here, but as an incentivize maybe having men come to a listening session by also having some recreation, some fun, some play with the community, and inviting men to come to both. So, anyways, that was the idea that we had discussed, and that's where we're at so far. And I don't know. I think April is a little too soon to do it. Maybe the following month, May. And we have the NWTA on the 15th, so I don't know. But we can discuss it as a area core team.
Something I'm aware of is it may make sense for us even to start regularly scheduling these as online events. I know they won't be as, well, physical, I guess is the obvious word. Um, but they could be including everyone from San Diego to Ventura to Las Vegas. Um, I'm also thinking, just as a brainstorm, we currently generally don't meet on the fifth Monday of each month, and that would be really easy to turn those 4 fifth Mondays each year into listening sessions. If even if we, yeah, don't want to go further, which we might want to go further and have them even more frequently.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Steve asked me to bring it up and I forgot. Going online, yes.
And just so all of you know, in the chat, I uploaded a PDF of my slide deck of the presentation I just did with the typos corrected, because I've already corrected them. And so you now can download it to your computer and look at it at your leisure.
Max.
So yeah, Jorge's complete. Yeah. Yeah. So David, I really want to appreciate you and and Rick and David and every other man who, participated in convening this and holding this, and now your incredible kind of integrative summary, I think is super valuable. And it really resonated with a lot of what I've been feeling at in terms of what's moving through the system. And actually one of the things that I'm in the process of kind of instigating at the national level is a series of dialogue sessions. We haven't even fully put a name on them, but something to the effect of community conversations or fireside chats around the core values. And because my intention with that is to create a space where we can use those as a grounding and a kind of a center of gravity for our community, while embracing the differences of all the different things those words mean to us in our lives, in our cultures, and in what they signify. And so that's that is in process, and so I'm going to feed a lot of your input directly into that. um and and I think there's a lot of value in doing that as well locally, or looking at, how can we do these, some of these community building spaces to hold the difference. I am one question that I have, which doesn't need to be necessarily addressed now. We can talk offline, or if you can even share your outline. I'm curious about how you constructed the process, how you set the container, both the explicit parts and, sort of the energetic holding that was part of your intention. I think that would help us to know how we can do that, and especially, how we can translate that process into online in a way that's safe and relational. Because part of the challenge is that, and you said, Christopher, kind of a physical, but there is an embodied element to being actually in relationship, being able to interact naturally rather, and sort of in fluid ways that you don't get on online formats. And um, so I have some concerns about the capacity, and I think there's ways that even with those limitations, it can be held. So, yeah, so thank you.
Brady, what do you got?
I see a lot of benefits from what I know Christopher's proposing in the community listening. I want to add to that. In AA we say, how did meetings start? A resentment and a coffee pot. So if we want to grow, and you've got men who want to come, and we need help. There's me and Christopher here. I mean, the men here are the community holding up SoCal. We're holding up the whole southern half of California and into Nevada. this might be an opportunity to bring them in, because if it's not the critic who counts, if you're a critic, come on in the arena and join us. There's lots of space here. There's lots of opportunities for men. And getting the energy of a resentment can help can help create the world you want to be in, because we're all empowered men. We're all the gifts. We've all experienced the gift, and we want men who are the gift to come and help us in this area. So thank you, and thank you, David. I like to think of myself as a little bit of a strategist and global thinker, but you definitely put me to shame, bro. I mean, I love your beautiful mind. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I am in the process of saving as a PDF the listening session design document, and I'm going to upload that into the chat momentarily.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I don't drink coffee that often, but I can tell you that resentment can get you pretty fucking far in making the world a better place. Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts on any of this? Suggestions, comments, questions, protestations? Yeah, I'm just gonna. Oh, I'm seeing Jamie wants to pause. I can pause this.